Hello again, fellow YouTubers and fellow Bond fans. Solomon Pleasant back for another James Bond movie review. When I said my next review was next week, I lied. So deal with it. Anyway, so as you can realize, I'm doing 2 reviews in one day. Whoop-de-doo. Because I just felt like getting this one out of the way because my voice is getting... I gotta drink something. Voice is getting a little bit whatnotty, and I'm not going to be here tomorrow for most of the day, so I might as well get this one out of the way. And, yeah, before I go on, this one I have a bit of a trouble remembering some of the things, so if I forget something from this film, don't yell at me for it. Just put a nice little thing in the comments saying, hey, you forgot this, but it's okay, because you're human, and humans make mistakes. We're not robots on these channels. Got that? We're not robots. We don't do everything right. Having that said, let's dive right into The Man with the Golden Gun. Okay, so let's start with story, and here's the problem with this story. Half of it makes sense, half of it doesn't. On one side, the first part of the story, where Bond is being targeted by an assassin named Francisco Scaramanga using one of the most famous James Bond weapons in the world, the Golden Gun. In the entire franchise, this thing is the most famous weapon ever, because it's a one-shot kill. Thanks. And originally, Bond is thinking, oh, this guy's just trying to eliminate me, which, that makes sense. An assassin trying to kill James Bond, that makes a legitimate amount of sense. And then you get into the third act, and part of the second act, where apparently Scaramanga's plan is to... He wanted to steal this device which helps power this solar-powered gun, which he's going to use to do something with. I don't recall him explaining what he's going to do with that gun. He never says. He just demonstrates it on Bond's plane. It's just like, oh, you mad? I just blew up your plane, and now I'm going to kill you next. And it's just like, what? Hang on. Camera's on, right? Yeah, it's on. That would have been awkward. So, anyway... yeah, the story doesn't make much sense. And before I go any further, I should probably mention that every time I think of James Bond films, I always forget this one. I think, oh, well, Dr. No from Russia with Love, Goldfinger, Thunderball, You Only Live Twice, On Her Majesty's Secret Service, and Diamonds Are Forever, Live and Let Die, and then I think The Spy Who Loved Me. I completely always forget about The Man with the Golden Gun. I always forget this film. This film, to me, is kind of forgettable, as you can tell, because I almost never remember it. I always forget this one. This is the one I always forget. Doesn't mean I hate this film, no, because there are some films that are a little bit lower on the list that we'll get to in a little bit, I think. Anyway, but yeah, the story isn't that memorable. It's just kind of what? It's just kind of a head-scratching and just kind of confusing. So, for that reason, I give story a star, because I just don't remember. Anywho, let's move on to scenery. Again, the scenery is just kind of off. I mean, Bond's in Tokyo, I think, for most of this, and Tokyo just looks so dirty. It's, like, unclean and whatnot. It's just really weird. Excuse me. And it doesn't make a whole... It isn't that good. Now, the last scene where he's in the funhouse with Scaramanga, that's actually pretty cool, but for the most part, most of the scenery is forgettable. The last act is the only thing that I remember. I don't remember most of the other film because most of it's just like bland. So for that reason, I give scenery a half a star because most of the film is bland. Whoops. Anywho, moving on to follow-up. This film doesn't follow up Live and Let Die. I really liked Live and Let Die, despite my nonchalant feelings towards it during my review. But I really like Live and Let Die. This film doesn't compare to Live and Let Die. It doesn't follow it up very well. It just doesn't. Because it's so forgettable. I forget most of this stuff from The Man with the Golden Gun. Most of it I forget. And I'm sorry if you don't like that, but that's how it is. It's just forgettable. So, for that reason, I give Follow Up a half a star because, again, it's a very forgettable film. Moving on to theme music. I don't like this theme music very well. It's not the best. Now, granted, it's not the worst, because at least it's entertaining. It's at least entertaining and at least peppy enough to keep me awake to watch the rest of the film. But it's not that good. There are a lot of theme songs that are better. So for that reason, I give it a half star, mainly because it's just not the best and the lyrics are all over the place, but at least it's peppy. Moving on to characters. This is the one part of the film that I genuinely like, because I think Roger Moore is actually pretty good in this film. I think he did well. Excuse me. Now, the Bond girls are forgettable and do almost absolutely nothing as far as I remember. I barely remember M and Q Branch, so I barely remember them in there. Scaramanga is a very memorable villain. I will give him that. Mainly because of his golden gun. That thing is a trademark to James Bond and is the one thing that everybody remembers from the James Bond fandom, is the golden gun. It's one of the most memorable things from James Bond, and ergo, everybody remembers Francisco Scaramanga for being the original user. So I give him credit for that. I also give credit to Nick Nack. Now, granted, I don't necessarily like this henchman. I just find him a little bit annoying, and he's just not that like memorable, except for the fact that he's a midget. Whoop-de-doo. Now, nothing against midgets or anything, but he's just... there's nothing really to work with. I mean, have a personality. Just because you're short doesn't make you a henchman. Doesn't make you a good henchman, I should say. It makes you could make you a henchman. And there are some other henchmen in there that I don't fully remember because they weren't there for that long period of time. So, basically, you got a villain and a henchman to work with, and you got Roger Moore. And then a bunch of forgettable characters. Still, that's enough to make it work because Scaramanga is such a memorable villain. It's enough to make it work. So, for that reason, I give characters a star because Scaramanga works out really well in this film, despite his plan not making any legitimate sense. So, all in all, I give this film an... what is that? 7? Yeah, that's an 8. Or a 3 for people keeping track at home. So, yeah. I didn't expect this to get a very high rating, but at the same time, just because it's forgettable doesn't mean I don't like it. There are some of the Bond films that I remember, but I don't necessarily like as much as some of the other Bond films. And again, I must make my policy clear. All Bond films are gold. All Bond films are 5-star gold to me. All Bond films are genuine gold. But I can at least acknowledge that there are problems with some of the Bond films. So, again, I always want to clear that up because I don't want to sound like I hate on Bond or anything, because I clearly don't. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing this at all. Regardless, I guess there's nothing else really much to say. This has been Solomon Pleasant, and what is next time? There's the one I was looking for. There you go. The next time's going to be interesting, I can already tell you. Alright. Spy Who Loved Me. Nice. This has been Solomon Pleasant, signing off.